Greetings all. Welcome to our first Circular Cities webinar. My name is Mike Boyle. And Sophia, you
Hello,
introduce yourself?
everybody.
Yep. Yeah.
Nice to meet
We
you.
have an interesting setup here today. And what we're trying to do is bring some representatives from the United States and also from Europe to go ahead and exchange experiences. And we're really looking forward to seeing what kind of results that we'll have today. Sophia, I think you might have something to say. I remember you telling me you had a little story you wanted to go ahead and tell us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, how do we get to making a live stream like this with people that we would like to see here? From my side, it was really an experience that I moved around a couple of widely different cities across the globe, from Eastern Europe to Western Europe and the Middle East and back and forth. And with that said, I have come across really good solutions and really bad solutions, and a lot of waste coming from us as human beings, right? In the different cities that I lived. And what I came across and what I found is really the mentality is the one that is important to change how we think about what we produce as trash and waste in our lives, and those good solutions are not just a matter of money and not just a matter of collaboration between the different parties like government or private organizations and humans, but it really starts with us and how we educate ourselves. So that's why I thought this would be a good idea to start with sharing really good examples from any of the angles that I just mentioned, and really bring these together to share with others and inspire other people to do the same, right?
Right.
So,
I think
you're
we'll get plenty of examples here today and how that transformation actually looks like from the various cities. And I'd like to go ahead and tell a story. If we can go back in time, there was a year not too long ago, 2016, when we thought that was annus horribilis. We learned that there were worse things than 2016. In any case, without getting too political, I was rather despondent around November and was talking to a lot of my friends who were not necessarily happy about some of the events that were taking place. And I met one friend who spent some time here in Vienna and also in the United States, and she was saying, actually, this is a great time. And I said, what? Huh? What are you saying? And she was talking about a situation in various cities in the United States, and I've been living here for a number of years, so I'm far away from actually going ahead and making any claims there, right? And they were saying, yeah, because you can't get anything done on the federal level, we have to do it in the city level. And I thought, wow, that's great, because we keep talking about closed loops and taking control. And so they give us no other choice. We have to take control. We have to take responsibility. And I'm hoping that this program today will really take us in that direction. Before we go to our star-studded panel, I'd like to go ahead and introduce who we have. We'll be first starting with Julie Raskin, who is the Executive Director of the Sanitation Foundation in New York City. And hopefully we'll be coming up with number two. That would be Per Müller, who's the Facilitation and Development of Urban and Industrial Symbiosis in Karlenburg. And we'll be closing with Jennifer Hill, who is the Executive Director of the Circular Triangle in Durham. And so, without further ado, and I cut myself out, Julie. I was going to give, oops, sorry. Let's go ahead and remove you from mute. That looks good. So, well, welcome, Julie, for joining us today. And I know that this is even really special because very soon outside you're going to have a real deluge. Perhaps if you can tell us a little bit about what New York has in store within the next hour or so.
Sure. Thank you for having me. That's right. We are preparing in New York City for what is looking to be like the biggest snowstorm, at least of the last 5 years. I think we're expecting between 12 and 18 inches, which is a big deal for anybody living in New York, but especially as a representative here of the New York City's Department of Sanitation, that is the agency responsible for snow clearing and removal. So if this kind of magical thing happens the night before a storm, where the garbage and recycling trucks transform and change out some of the equipment and put on front end loaders and become snow clearing mobiles. And so that actually means for the next couple of days we probably won't be collecting trash and recycling, but we'll be salting the streets. That's already been happening, and then starting to clear the streets as soon as the snow starts falling. So it is quite an exciting time. I think it's something few people know about the sanitation department, but it's a huge part of what we do. And I say we, you introduced me as the executive director of the Sanitation Foundation, which is my correct title, but the Sanitation Foundation is the official nonprofit partner of New York City's Department of Sanitation. So I sort of wear two hats, and all of our work is about supporting the department primarily in trying to achieve the city's zero waste goals, but more wholeheartedly supporting the department and the people that do all of this great work.
I understand that actually you're wearing three, because after we finish our session today, you'll go ahead and put on your galoshes and get the shovel out and go ahead and help all the colleagues to make sure that the streets of New York City are all clear. So in any case, thank you very much in advance for everybody in New York City. I pass on my gratitude. But with all kidding aside, I think it would be quite interesting for the viewers that we have today to talk about how did something that was tied to no waste get in touch, logged into the sanitation company or into the New York sanitation? How did it start?
Yeah, sure. That's a very good question. So the sanitation department in New York is the municipal entity that's responsible for collecting refuse from city homes and from nonprofits and public institutions. There is a different there's a kind of a private sector solution for businesses that I won't go into. But it's and also we clear snow. But about 5 or 6 years ago, the city as a whole, as you said, cities working it out, right around 2016, a little bit before, the city declared a goal to send zero waste to landfills by 2030. So as part of its kind of overall environmental sustainability goal, understanding that waste and refuse, and especially landfilling, of food, accounts for a good chunk of methane and greenhouse gases and contributes to global warming. So, with that, the sanitation department, which does collect and transport and export all of that waste, became the kind of primary city entity responsible for executing on that goal. And I think the leadership in the sanitation department at that time was astute to recognize that the city government couldn't do that alone, that achieving that goal is something that takes cross-sector collaboration as well as a lot of engagement from residents. And so it sort of spawned, kind of incubated and created a nonprofit to really extend beyond the sanitation department and build these kind of partnerships with the private sector and do a lot of this really important public engagement work that, solves this problem. I think the commissioner at the time, Catherine Garcia, put it very bluntly when she hired me that the foundation in her mind was to do the cool shit that government can't do that still, gets at the heart of our mission. So I think, when you think about a waste entity trying to eliminate waste, it's really about sustainable resource management. We're not going to eliminate waste and then lay everybody off. It's actually probably quite the opposite. It takes more manpower and more, physical and brain power to actually go and collect and sort the resources into their proper places. So whether that's picking up food waste and taking it to a composting facility, or whether that's collecting recyclables, but obviously the goal being to send very little, if anything, to landfill.
Right. And it's funny because that was almost a piece of telepathy, because I was going to ask you what kind of mindset change actually had to take place if you're talking about an organization who's responsible for collecting waste and now trying to see how do we go ahead and reduce the waste. What kind of challenges did you have with that?
And I think that's it. I think it's shifting. It's understanding that it's thinking about those objects and those things differently. And like I said, the most obvious is, collecting food scraps and then turning it into compost. We have a couple facilities that DSNY, the Department of Sanitation, manages within the city. And we also have partnerships with local farms and other nonprofits, but being able to actually take that food waste, bring it to, for example, our plant on Staten Island, and then 6 months later come and pick up compost and bring it to a park or community garden or sell it to landscapers even, was sort of mind-blowing, I think, to a lot of people who had been in this business for a long time. So I think that's where, reaching out and kind of forming partnerships also with, people outside of the waste sector who are already sort of thinking about things differently and thinking about a circular life cycle. The actual event that established our foundation in 2016 was a fashion collaboration with a streetwear designer named Heron Preston. And he, I think, was sort of having his own epiphany about waste and litter, and started to feel like if he wasn't doing something directly about it, he was contributing to the problem. And he actually approached the sanitation department and said, I want to do a line of clothing. That's what I do best. I do clothing. I want to do clothing both inspired by your workers and your workforce uniforms, which I think are cool when nobody had really thought that before, but also reusing fabric so that we're basically trying to eliminate textile waste and make cool new things out of old things, and the kind of a nod to your history and your legacy. And that was, that was when the government entity said, we actually can't, we can't do that. We can't do a partnership like that, but we've been wanting to create this nonprofit. And I think within 6 weeks, they had it established and up and running so that the nonprofit could carry that out. They did a runway show. They sold a line of clothing. That was kind of the seed funding to get our organization off the ground.
You mentioned the word epiphany, and I was wondering, was there a period of time that maybe you might have had an epiphany of where you saw that something has to be done? Sorry, I couldn't hold myself back.
Good. When you asked me, it's funny because when I thought of Heron Preston, but I also thought of the way you think about waste differently. We have a retired sanitation worker. His name is Nelson Molina, and he was working for 30 years in East Harlem collecting garbage. And he was secretly finding things in people's garbage that he thought was not garbage and actually saving them, refurbishing them if it needed it, and storing them away in the second floor of his garage. And now it's become a 40,000 item collection called Treasures in the Trash of artifacts that he's collected over more than 30 years. And it's actually something where ultimately we're trying to create a sanitation museum, and his collection will be part of that. But you reminded me of my childhood, because we call it Treasures in the Trash. What he was doing was finding treasures, and I explicitly remember complaining to my mom once that I was bored, and her solution was that we go on a treasure hunt, and we put on kitchen gloves and we walked around the neighborhood and picked up litter, basically, but looking for interesting things. And so I think, it was something that was sort of bred in my upbringing, but I think I understood, at least from what I was learning at an early age, I think, and climate change was sort of starting to become a thing. Recycling was becoming a thing. And so I feel like I was sort of a product of that era.
That was a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. You put on a number of events, and I was very fascinated to see all those different events that you're actually holding for your customers, the citizens of New York City. Just out of curiosity, how was that taken up by the citizenry? Did they embrace it? Did they wonder what is actually going on here? What kind of response did you get?
I think all of the above. I think with the Heron Preston, I was speaking to a colleague this morning who was at the launch event. I was not part of the organization at that time, and she said there was a Vogue magazine article about that event and this runway show, and just sort of the that it brought together such a diversity of people that people kind of didn't know what to do with each other, and couldn't quite wrap their head around how the sanitation department was putting on this fashion show. And there was sort of just this excitement, but also confusion. And now we're in our third year of hosting something we call Refashion Week, which just continues to grow in popularity each year. And we're sort of known and expected to do it now. And that's a whole week after New York's Fashion Week. It's sort of a reaction to Fashion Week. It's a whole week of events about textile waste and reduction and how we can have more sustainable fashion. So it's increased, I think, 900% increase in attendees year over year. So I think it's catching on. And I'd say the same for our, we do a big event around food waste called the Food Waste Fair. And I think the first time we did it, it was very kind of insider. It was a trade show really to help equip businesses, restaurants and hotels and grocery stores with all sorts of resources for how they could reduce their food waste and how they could, compost it or have a digester or do better inventory management, et cetera. And I think, again, the first year it was sort of this kind of insider, the waste heads or the trash nerds or, who you would expect. And then the second time we did it in 2019, it was this kind of cool thing. I was on morning talk shows talking about it because we had chefs involved and, we sold out of the expo and it just became kind of more of a widespread, people were seeing different options for reducing food waste. And it was kind of an innovation showcase and trade show all in one.
You used a term I have never heard before, and so I can't hold myself back. You have to tell me what, in God's name, is a trash nerd?
They exist. We have a strong following of them, I think.
Okay. Perhaps you can describe this persona who's the trash nerd. What do they look like? Maybe the age and what are profession, perhaps?
Somebody just wrote into my to our general info inbox. Her best friend is a trash nerd, and she's trying to come up with a gift for her birthday. She wanted to see if one of our sanitation workers could write her a special note, or she really wanted to see one of our facilities and go behind the scenes and kind of understand how it all works, but we can't do that right now because of COVID. So we're putting together kind of a little package for her of kind of different behind the scenes, documents. We've got our calendar, our sanitation, employee of the month calendar. But I think, broadly speaking, people who are thoughtful about trash, but and understand, we have an anthropologist in residence. We have a professional, professor at NYU, anthropologist, Robin Nagel, who is on our board of directors, and she actually holds the title anthropologist in residence for the sanitation department. And, her entire study is around trash and how that reflects society and all of the kind of aspects of life that it touches: economic, social, racial. So I think, maybe better than nerd, I think people that think a lot about trash and are curious about it, and in some instances want to solve it, and in some instances want to understand it or use it to understand other phenomena.
Well, being an obsessive type myself, I actually can clearly identify with the term nerds. And so that's why I had to go ahead and ask that question. But getting back to the point of the anthropologist, yeah, I think that's really important because it's all in the composition of our society, how we coexist within a society and what the various functions within society, what kind of role they play. So I think that's really, really fascinating. Maybe one last question from my end, and then I will let you go ahead. No, sorry, you're not going to get a chance to go straight to your galoshes because I'd like you to have to come back to our panel discussion. But when you're looking at all of these goals that we set, be it what we're talking about here in Europe of being climate neutral by 2050, and I live in Austria, and we are talking about being with energy much earlier than that, possibly by 2030. We'll see if we actually get there. What goals do you have for New York City, especially with regards to all of the changes that are taking place? And we'd love to all think that 2021 should be a little bit better than 2020. Any specific goals from the New York City side that we should know about?
I mean, we still have a very ambitious goal to send zero waste to landfills. And I think I will say in the short term, judging from the way the city's revenue has been decimated, the industry here has been destroyed. I think achieving that goal is going to fall more on the shoulders of my organization and our partners and private sector solutions and community solutions, because sadly our curbside compost program the budget has been cut for that for at least a year, potentially longer. And so, I think that's why I'm glad that we were born during kind of the times of good and we're somewhat established, but we are kind of needed more than ever. And I think we're looking to our partners, and it's just been amazing to see over the past 6 months how many entrepreneurs have sprung up to find ways to bring, a woman who drives around Brooklyn all day on Sunday and picks up food scraps and takes them up to a regional farm, for a small fee or for, pay what you can. A guy who goes around with his pug, his dog, and picks up food scraps in Astoria, Queens, and does the same thing. I think we have found that the people want this. I think the city did a good job of establishing the goal and establishing the importance of it. And now we sort of all hands.
Yeah, and certainly there's an opportunity for all of us to go ahead and pitch in, because we should feel empowered. And I think in the worst case scenario, you can always go ahead and call in those trash nerds, because I'm sure they're always willing to help. So in any case, Julie, thank you very much. If I can go ahead and send you backstage, and then we'll go ahead and bring you back out when it's time for our panel discussion. So Julie, thank you very much. And the looks like Per has not made it. So let's go ahead and move forward with Jennifer. Jennifer, thank you very much for joining. And sorry, I caught you exactly when you were grabbing a drink. Apologies for that. Okay. That was not part of the plan. But in any case, just to show that we're live and we're authentic. Julie, thank you very much again for joining today. And you are coming from the circular triangle. So perhaps if you can first tell us, what is the circular triangle?
Yes, let me start by telling you where the triangle is, because I know this is an international audience, so not everyone might know where I am. So I'm based in Durham in North Carolina, in the United States, and the triangle refers to the region of this area. So the region being the Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill area of North Carolina is called the triangle, for long historical reasons. So the name Circular Triangle refers to the region. We are a regional organization. We are focused, like you said in your introduction, on local advocacy and local solutions. And you can see the cat. This is all live. They have access to my calendar. They always know when I'm doing something live. That's when they want to come in.
Oh, the more authentic, the better, I would say.
There's no way to keep them out. So that's where the triangle is. And just for context, Durham has about 275,000 people. The triangle in total is about 1 million people, just for so you can understand the scale. So Circular Triangle is a fairly new nonprofit. We're a startup nonprofit. And our goal and our focus is on accelerating a circular economy in the triangle. So a regional circular economy, a local circular economy. And right now our biggest focus area is the built environment, and happy to talk about why we chose that as our focus area. But that's where we are right now. So that Circular Triangle in a nutshell is a regional nonprofit focused on accelerating a local circular economy for this area of the United States.
You mentioned the term circular economy, and I noticed that on your website. And of course, you would think today that the term circular economy should be relatively well known, and we've been trying to go in this direction for a while here in Europe. But I have to be honest with you. I still run across a situation today where I use the term circular economy and people don't know what I'm talking about. So I can only imagine how difficult it is for you. So perhaps if you could talk about your travails there.
Yeah. Yes, we definitely, most of the people that we talk to have not heard the term circular economy. I usually start by saying, like, this isn't something I made up. It's very popular in Europe because a lot of people just have never heard of this concept. So the way that we, at Circular Triangle, the way that we and I usually explain it is first by explaining the difference between what circular economy means and what I call traditional sustainability, what that means. And so what I say a lot of times is sustainability, the two main difference, there's a lot of differences, But the two main differences is, one, sustainability is about reducing the amount of waste we are creating. It's about being less bad than we were yesterday. And it's about prolonging our resources for as long as possible. Circular economy is creating brand new systems so that we are not less bad than we were yesterday, but we're actually completely circular, or even being regenerative to natural resources. So it's a completely different way of addressing our resource use. So usually that's where I start, by explaining, well, because a lot of people are like, well, aren't you just talking about recycling? No, because that's the main difference between recycling and circular. Is recycling still does have an endpoint of a landfill for the product. And then I usually go into what are the principles of circular economy. At Circular Triangle, we use the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's 3 principles: designing waste out of the system, keeping resources in use as long as possible, and or regenerating nature. So I'd say a solution is circular if it abides by one or multiple of those 3 principles. So as an example, so that would be, why does recycling not, as it traditionally works, why does recycling not count as circular? Because it does not abide by those 3 principles. So that's how I usually explain it. But it is a challenge. It's a big challenge to talk about circular economy. And I think one of the reasons is because it is so far from where we are, it is hard for people to envision it, because it's basically a brand new paradigm for thinking about sustainability. And it's also because we're asking folks to think about economics at the same time as sustainability. And those are often not the same people. You know, when we talk about sustainability, like, let's have a zero waste society. Well, in my view, the only way to do that is to also talk about the economics of our resources. But that usually has not traditionally been part of the sustainability conversation.
Right. And I don't think that you are alone in dealing with the difficulty in truly understanding some of these concepts. I think that we are here in Europe are looked upon as being much more advanced, and I really question sometimes. There was a long, without going too much into detail, there was a long period of time where we were told that recycling is good, and so we always kept concentrating on the recycling part, and now we're starting to come to the conclusion, yeah, that was nice, all right, but it didn't really take us to where we want to be. And now we're only getting to the point of understanding the damage of following that path. So perhaps if you can tell us from your perspective, you mentioned this is relatively new, where was your starting point? What level of maturity do you think you were dealing with within the society and actually going ahead and bringing across these points?
Yeah, I'd say that in the Triangle, people are generally environmentally conscious. The 3 different major cities in the Triangle all have different varying cultures and different levels of environmental consciousness. But it's a fairly progressive area in the sense of, you'd be hard pressed to find someone here that is like, no, the earth is, I just want to throw things on the ground. I mean, obviously we have litter just like everywhere, but the area generally cares about that. But I think I'm sure this data exists and I just don't know it. I don't know our recycling rates.
You could tell me and I wouldn't be able to refute it anyway, so it's not a problem.
So recycling, you talked about recycling in Europe, that was something you focused on, and then realizing it doesn't work. So I think there's an opportunity here, both in the United States generally and in the Triangle specifically. And that is, we are doing so badly that I think we can leapfrog a little bit. So for example, recycling rates in the United States are under 10%, which is horrible. And even obviously the stuff that does get recycled, like, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't actually make it into recycling a lot of times. So because it's so bad, I think we could just say, you know what, let's just scrap it. Let's just go move along. Let's just go right to circular economy. And so I think there's actually a real opportunity there when things have not been going well to not have to go from one step to another step to another step. So I think of, for example, in countries that did not have landlines, moving right to cellular phones. That's kind of the how I think about it, is like, we don't need to go from no phones to landlines to cellular phones if cellular phones already exist. Let's just get everyone cellular phones. So I think that is an opportunity here to really talk about if we're not doing well on being less bad than we were yesterday, then why don't we just skip that goal entirely and go right to how can we be completely either neutral to the planet or regenerative towards the planet at a local level. So that's how I try to think about it.
Yeah, I personally don't think that the situation is as bad in the United States as perhaps it's been depicted. And on the other side, I'm not quite sure that we are doing as great as the press that we actually get. There's one last point I'd like to go ahead and raise, and I see that Pat has joined it, so we'll go ahead and move on to the third interview. I was watching a webinar yesterday, an organization in the state, and it very possibly could have been coming from your state, from North Carolina, because of one of the biggest businesses in North Carolina was actually one of the sponsors. And I thought it was quite interesting. A number of mayors were actually on the show and talking about their city goals towards sustainability. And I was very, very impressed. But there was one last point that I thought was very different than the way that's often done in Europe, and that is the public-private partnership. And in fact, it was in this webinar I was watching, the company was very prominent in saying all of what they're doing to focus on sustainability, which certainly wouldn't happen here in Austria, and I think for most countries here in Europe it wouldn't be the same. How is your feeling, especially looking at the circular triangle? Looking at that private partnership, how is that actually working for you?
Yeah, so you're saying, well, like how much are we pursuing private partnership and kind of thinking about that together?
How important is it? Yeah, and actually both, yeah.
Yeah, so I think in terms of strategy, public-private partnership is the way to go. And I don't mean it necessarily in the literal sense of, for example, the Sanitation Foundation is an actual public-private partnership in terms of legal entity. At least that's my understanding. But I think so our organization works in 3 different ways. We work on general community education, we work on policy change, and we work directly with industry professionals. So using our, right now I mentioned we are focused on the built environment and circularity in the built environment. So I'll explain how that goes for the built environment. Mm-hmm. So for the general community, we are focused on educating about the problem about construction waste. How big of a problem is it? How toxic is it? Why should they care about it? And also building up a market for people that would want zero waste buildings. For policies, we are focused on changing unified development ordinances, changing building codes, things like that. So that's working directly with local policymakers, which, by the way, in a lot of places those laws are created by local governments, which is why for a built environment, that's actually the perfect level of government to work on. We don't need to work at a federal level when you're talking about building codes. That's a local thing. Mm-hmm. And then for industry, we're working directly with industry professionals to change best practices. So construction companies, designers, architects in the triangle. And I really do think that moving towards a circular economy requires this sort of multifaceted thinking for public and private partnerships, because what I don't want to happen is for us to, we found a great policy solution. We worked many years to get it through city council and county commissioners and all the different places it needs to go. And then on the last day, a developer shows up and says, I oppose that because it doesn't work for me. And then it dies. So the point I try to make is we want to work with developers too. We want to work with architects too and builders, because this needs to change. Since it is a paradigm change, it needs to change on multiple levels. And business is honestly where a lot of the waste is created. For the built environment, it's businesses creating construction waste. It's not individual homeowners creating construction waste. It's very different from household trash. And so we work, I should also mention, Circular Triangle is focused exclusively on industry and government level waste. We're not focused on household trash. And the reason is it is vastly outpacing household trash in terms of scale of the problem. And therefore the opportunity to change it is much, much larger. And so there are other circular economy nonprofits and startups that are actual public-private partnerships. So in Charlotte, North Carolina, for example, there's an organization called Envision Charlotte, which is directly tied to the city government. Mm-hmm. And I think that works really well for them. That seems to have, the way that they have set that up works really well. We haven't done that here, at least not yet. We are a separate organization, but that also gives us a little bit of leverage to be able to advocate for policies within the government that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do if we were part of the government.
Touche. Very good. No, and I think that obviously within that model, then it has to be a public private partnership, because that's part of your model per se.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. Jennifer, then thank you very much. If I can go ahead and send you back to, and I'll have to send myself back to the backstage, and I will go ahead and move Sophia and Per up. Let's see how this works. Let's see if I could do this. I'll move you up here. Yep, I'm getting it wrong. There we go. And here, and I remove myself.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, everyone, basically, for setting the stage. And finally, we have you here, Per. Thank you very much for joining us. And we can't hear you for some reason.
Yeah.
Now it's better. All right. So after all of the discussion, I came to the conclusion that maybe having you as the last participant is actually quite good, because Jennifer has ended the discussion on a really high note, mentioning really, the partnership between private and public sector companies. And from this perspective that you have in Kalundborg in Copenhagen, Denmark, is really an industrial symbiosis or a collaboration between different actors on an industrial scale, right? So could you please tell us more about, how did they start it, and also where you are on this journey, right? Just to recap some of the time. So it's the symbiosis is not necessarily circular, but you are getting there. So how does that work at the moment?
Yeah, I mean it's an old lady, put it that way. So it's an old story, but the great thing about this is it has actually survived many troubled periods, challenges that has been there over time. But it all, started by coincidence, basically, but based on solid normal behavior, really basically based on the fact that a company needed a resource.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fresh water, and that came from a lake nearby. But that agreement was done private. So with the municipality at that time also running the utilities,
Mm-hmm.
worked together with the local refinery to actually solve this issue of needing a resource to actually keep producing in a sustainable way. So that's the public-private partnership coming in a little by coincidence, but not really again, because it was a need. But the fact that they were able to actually reach out, communicate, collaborate, and come up with an innovative solution, and co-creating and co-financing that was the first baby step into slowly creating this awareness of partnership, the partnership model, and that culture then grew over time. So it's kind of an organic process with this partnership. So it wasn't planned, not a big eco-industrial park, but it was developing over time, and the culture just grew, and then now it's just the new normal, has been for a long time. And having this new normal as a natural green business model approach helps us actually to take the next step into the circular approach.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that it all grew kind of by coincidence, but now it's becoming more and more systemic approach, and that is what we as a facilitator in the Secretariat for this private association, the Kalundborg Symbiosis, we do. We try to facilitate this and try to disturb them.
This really sounds great, and as you said, it's an old lady, which is a very nice term to use for this collaboration. But as you said, it was not exactly a short process, and now you have started, becoming circular. Where do you see this partnership really bringing the strength to get the people understand how circularity really works? Because this is not such a linear thing, right? Just because someone collaborates, it does not mean necessarily that they will pick up on the circular opportunities. So how did you develop this angle, or how did you start developing that understanding in the partners as well as the wider community?
I mean, it's really between the partners, so this public-private partnership, so municipality, utilities, and then the private industries. I mean, because we have this old lady to take in the hand and walk along, they understand the basics around it, about being sustainable, and that it is not only trying to save the planet or have a nice PR branding, but it is really smart business. And having proven that by real life cases, implementing that into business, saying this is also good business if you do it right, then we have all the good examples that we can step up on and say, let's take the next steps. And that's where we have actually succeeded 2 years back to actually have the CEOs of this partnership, big companies like Ørsted, Novo Nordisk, Novozymes, Gyproc, so on, to actually agree on a common vision that they want to be the world-leading industrial symbiosis with a circular approach to production. I mean, having them say that loud and have that as a kind of a in their conscience, and actually working on that every day in their own company, but also in the partnership, is because we already have matured that over some time. Of course, we need to speed this up. We cannot wait 40, 50 years every time we need to do something in a new area. But I mean, then we have them to be the ambassadors of this approach within industry. So when they say it's possible and they're doing it, others will follow, and they will dare to actually invest and work in partnership with them or with others, because we have real life examples.
Absolutely. This that you mentioned, that this is more between the partners, just clicked in mind for me, because I have been to Denmark a lot of times and I've seen the city really developing in the right direction from circular economy perspective. Do you think that this kind of behavior on a larger scale between industrial partners has an impact on the larger population within the city, or the other way around, or is that a mutual development, or is there any? What do you think?
It's both ways, and I think probably we need more from the cities to actually interfere with the industry. Right now, we actually about to realize a project where, when we talk industrial symbiosis, it's a business case, and investments, of course, increase if you want to do over long distances. So proximity has normally been one of the rules. Now we are breaking that rule because we can, and we now actually can realize to actually share residual streams, so waste products over longer distances, meaning bringing something from industry to the cities. And you could also go the other way back. So having that case also to actually showcase will bring an awareness both in the cities but also in industry. And then, of course, we can do it from the industry side, but we also need the cities to actually come and tell their stories, their challenges, and then we need to put this into, like Finland has been very good at, actually introduce this into the education system from basic school and up. So we need to educate ourselves, our children, but also we as adults in whatever job we have, and as parents. I mean, we need to bring this in as a new normal and talk about it and challenge each other and say we want to be part of this. But I mean, it really comes back to the essence of building partnership again. We need to meet, we need to communicate, we need to open up, trust, and then share. And from that, we can build a circular economy. We cannot build it if we don't meet and communicate, because circular economy is, well, you can do it local, but then it's not really circular because there's so many chains that you need to be connected to do it, to make it a fully circular one. So we need to think much broader in terms of geography. So that's why we need to open up and talk to, make new unexpected partnerships, as we like to say. Think people you never thought you wanted to meet on, you should meet, that could help you, or you could help them actually move. So the more the merrier, basically.
Could not agree more. And I think the two ladies before you have echoed the same and then talked about the same. Now you have picked up the circular economy relevant projects, and then it's moving ahead right within the industrial symbiosis. Could you give us a good example on how this works, really getting more and more people into this mindset and educating them? Is there a good example? I am aware of the one of the latest projects that you also have on your website, the value-based project that is still running, but could you please just tell us a little bit more about how this works and how this gathers volume and velocity in that sense?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Value Waste project is a Horizon 2020 project. Mm-hmm. And what's special about that one is that we're working with 3 basic value chains that we try to combine. It's really looking at bio-waste. But we also have decided to actually bring 2 cases up, some Murcia in Spain and then Kalundborg in Denmark, where we are much more advanced in, sorting waste. We can still learn a lot, and Murcia wanted to learn, and they are good at insects and so on. So we're trying to share, do this cross-border capacity building. That's what we need to do, just pitching that in circular economy. That's important. But then we need, of course, to engage the right stakeholders. That's what this project also tries to do. Mm-hmm. Adding to it innovation and new startups, and trying to build new business models based on industrial symbiosis mindset. But we try to include the citizens, have them discuss, question us, and answer mm-hmm. themselves how they would like to actually, for instance, supplement their diet with the proteins coming from insects, or from protein that has been produced by bacteria that has actually used biogas, biomethane, natural gas as a carbon source. So totally different types of food and feed, and different ways of producing it, because basically those new protein sources is based mm-hmm. on their own bio-waste, so their kitchen waste, recycling that into a system, trying to recapture and upcycle the nutrients, and restore the energy balance also. So it's really challenging both industry, public-private partners, politicians, but also the local people in our cities to talk with us and challenge us, and we challenge them. So that's the new thing, and we will end up with a value-based model where we try to integrate the circular into the innovative way into the food production based on bio-waste. So basically, trying to grasp the whole project in a very few sentences, but that's basically what it is. So that's really trying to build bridges, but communicating, trying to aim at the right level to actually get a hold of the relevant stakeholders, be it local people or be it mm-hmm. politicians.
I'm honestly amazed. First of all, about the insect project side, especially that I know it's not exactly an easy trick to pull on a lot of people. So I'll be interested in that one. But mm-hmm. also, I think we got back to this eternal question of what is the right level of collaboration and how we can induce more collaboration and inject more interaction between the different stakeholders. As we have run out of our time, and we do believe we have a panel discussion still coming up with everybody involved. So I think I would be happy if Mike could send us all back into the background. Thank you very much, Per, for this shorter version. And
Great.
then we are all here. Thank you, Mike.
Sure. Just to give everybody a warning, I'll go ahead and bring you back to the screen. Jennifer, there we go. I made sure you finished drinking your water before I got ahead and brought you back. And we have a special guest, Faith Legendra, who will be joining us with our panel discussion. But before we get started, I do have to make a comment. Per, when you were talking about your story with the symbiosis, it reminded me of that scene from Back to the Future where they open up the hood and they throw the trash and they use that as power to actually go ahead and generate them. And so you really inspired those thoughts from way back when. So thank you very much for that. we have actually received more of a comment that I'd like to go ahead and share and see what your opinion is. Flea markets or garage sales should be the shopping mall. What are your thoughts on that? Okay, please go ahead. Faith, you want to go ahead and start that
Oh,
one?
yes, this is one of my passion areas. I've been trying to encourage everybody this holiday season to not buy new, to go to all, and I know you can't go to a lot of flea markets in person anymore, but there's amazing ones online. There's amazing secondhand online. I know here in the United States, we have the Renewal Workshop, for example. Where they have wonderful, affordably priced items that are gently used, and if some of these items go for $400 to $500 and plus, that and now you can get them for $24 US. There's just so many out there. I think it's there's another one in Canada I know that does a lot of the secondhand, clothing and whatnot. There's a great website too, the Fix It website, where you can, fix things up to kind of renew them or repair them. I think that's these are all principles of the circular economy, to repair, to keep things in use, as Jennifer was saying. And then also, Julie started us out about the trash being the treasure, and Pear talked about it as well. You never know what you have that you consider not usable anymore, or just you want to throw it out, that could be used by a business, that could be used by a nonprofit organization, that could be used by your neighbors. Olio is a great app for food sharing around the holidays. We have a lot of leftover food for free. You just download the app, OLIO, and you share the food that you have out, and you just leave it outside so you don't have the human contact during COVID. But it's a great way to make sure that your leftovers during the holiday don't go to waste. But please don't buy new. Yes. Go ahead, Julie.
Can I plug our event? We're planning Refashion Week. It's February 26th to March 5th this year, and it's going to be virtual. So for all of those of you not in New York City, you can actually join. But that's the premise of it. The sanitation department manages a website and an app called Donate NYC. And it's basically a connector between nonprofits, thrift shops, and New Yorkers who have stuff to give away. So the Refashion Week is sort of an expose of the contents of that app. So we're having a marketplace, a digital marketplace on the kickoff day that's primarily going to be reselled items, refurbished items, repurposed. And then the runway show is all styles from thrift stores. So high fashion, low cost. So please, all of this information, all of our events are on our website, sanitationfoundation.org.
In case it wasn't quite clear to anybody, that was a call to action. I do have to say something what you were talking about, Faith. We have to be very careful about that food waste, because if we bring it to Pear's neighborhood, the worms might get to it. So the insects might get to it. So we have to be a little bit careful here. But
I'm a fan of the insects, though. I had my first cricket bar, I think it was at Food Loves Tech in New York, and it was delicious. And I think, especially if you are a vegetarian and you're trying to reduce your climate impact with large meats, because it takes a lot of water and a lot of resources to produce a cow meat, for example. A lot of people are looking for alternative protein, so I'm all for the insect part too.
No, so it all sounds very good. I think when we talk about the different develops that we have in the cities, one of the questions that Sophia and I have been talking about more at length is, how do we go ahead and bring these individual initiatives together that we could truly learn from each other? Any ideas from your side? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'd like to just bring forward one example that we just are happy that we actually got funding for. It was originally just some crazy people. One of them was me from the Nordic countries, trying to actually share all this excitement and all these good cases that are actually out there, not being told, not being shared. And I've said this many times, but it's one of my small favorites. Books. We write really good books every day, all of us trying to fight for this circular economy. There's so many good examples being created and have been created. We need to take those books. If they haven't been written, we need to write them. Then we need to share them and have people read them. Because if you have done something, if you have written a book, but it's hidden away, it doesn't exist. And it's really waste. I mean, we should share these cases. And we've done this now in this network. We actually got funding from Nordic Innovation to actually work as Nordic partners cross-border to try and help each other engage and facilitate those out there that don't really know how to initiate this. Emerging hubs or maturing hubs that need some a kind of a team to gang up with, some experts or just somebody who's also being active within some of the same areas. Meet, talk together, share experiences, maybe create projects together, and create this common voice into also the political level to actually be heard and make a change, right? So we need to create these networks, and we need to be active in the best way to support these initiatives that we need to take to actually get there.
Sure.
So networking is very important, also cross-border. The unexpected partnership, right? Open up and have the unexpected enter and join in with them.
Okay, Jennifer, you're on mute. Perhaps if you can go ahead and join us, and I know you wanted to add something.
So I'll mention another thing that I think would be helpful in addition to books and sharing that way is I'll share what would be helpful. For example, what I would love. So that would be helpful to me. And what we want
it is Christmas. You may wish. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is case studies, both like written case studies and opportunities for sharing case studies and sharing from lessons learned from different cities, particularly around how things manifested, like how we started from zero and got to a circular point. Our theory of change for what we're doing here in the triangle is not scaling in terms of getting bigger, but scaling in terms of replication. There's a lot of aspects of circular economy that can be just done when you get to a larger scale in terms of bigger, but there's a lot of stuff that is really more about replicating local, something that worked really well in a small area, and you have to just kind of do it in a bunch of different cities. Because the economics don't work out if you make it too big. You really just have to replicate the small thing. But what we've found is we find good examples of circular economy initiatives in other places, but not a lot of how did they get there? How did they go from no one knew what circular economy was to a circular city? Like what's that transition look like? Something we're trying to do is document what we're doing as we do it, because we want to eventually help other cities do it. And part of what would be helpful in opportunities to share and network with other places is being able to talk to like cities, cities that have similar context in some particular way that is relevant to what we're trying to do. So as an example, just to the people on this call, if, for example, something we were working on was really related to transportation, talking to New York City is not very helpful because we are still predominantly a car area. And in New York City, you don't even need to own a car, and most people don't. So being able to kind of find case studies and talking to cities that are similar to you in some significant way would be really helpful, and that's something we're trying to do.
Great. Julie, do you have maybe a wish list there?
I think all of the above. I'm enjoying just taking in what you guys are all saying here today, and I think more forums like this. I think we have a problem in New York City where we tend to think that we're the center of the universe, and in instances like this, there is no center of the universe. It's all very connected. So I think just more opportunities like this for us to get out of our own egos and really dig in and learn, because there are obviously better or at least different ways to do what we're trying to do.
Well, I think we're all in a different situation. I live in the city of Vienna, where obviously the situation, Jennifer, that you were talking about, my opinion, is not relevant because you do not need a car in the city of Vienna. That being said, I tend to think that there are plenty of cities that are fitting that same model that you're talking about. So yeah, so there'd be a call for anybody who's watching or perhaps stumbling across this video later on. That's a call to action to you to see if you can go ahead and reach out to Jennifer, because you can help her out, and that would be really cool. Faith, what do you say? Anything on your wish list there?
to make sure that you're thinking about circular economy. And if you're a teacher, embedding it into your curriculum. If you are a leader in a company or organization, making sure that you have a circular economy team, even if it's a volunteer employee team, to put together some innovations around it. And even if you're a citizen in a community, like Julie, we have a lot of citizens. We have millions of people here in New York, and I believe truly that there's innovation in every mind. So please submit your innovations and ideas. I'm happy to take them at my LinkedIn. It's just we need everybody. We need all minds to be working on this so that we can innovate and truly create a circular economy globally.
That was an open invitation, folks. Go ahead and get in touch with Faith. How about you, Sophia? What would be on your wish list? I'll give you an opportunity as well.
Everything that the ladies have said so far, and again, just reinforcing that call to action, that please don't think that your idea is, too small or just not exactly relevant to some of the subjects. Just please go ahead and share, because you never know when it can help and where it can help. So I think that's also a call for action for us, Mike. Maybe there is a need for a pool of ideas globally where we can just browse, as we discussed before. So maybe that's my wish list for Santa now. It's a pretty huge wish, huh?
Well, we have a lot to overcome from 2020, so I think we should go ahead and look forward. But that kind of reminds me of another concept. If we look at it from the chicken and the egg, and we're looking about our local development, what does come first? Is it the people in the government who go ahead and define that we're going to move in this path, or is there a groundswell coming from the populace? In your experience, where has it been? Has it been more of a government element, or is it coming from the citizenry? Ladies.
I definitely have a thought on that. And unfortunately, my answer is going to be both.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah. So I think, I think this is something that this is not just for circular economy folks, but in general, we have a tendency as humans, especially in the 21st century, to really get excited about innovations, whether the innovation is a technology or a new idea. But we often forget about the human side of it, the behavior side of it. And obviously, I'm going to totally cop to saying I have a clear bias here because I'm a behavior scientist by training. So like, this is the lens I come through. But I will say that if we want to introduce a new innovation, and I would call it a circular economy even as a concept, as a new innovation, but then obviously also the specific innovations within circular economy, we have to think about the human behavior element to it. And that often comes both from a groundswell of people and from direction from a government. Because if we want people to uptake a new innovation, we can have the best innovation in the world, but if we're not thinking about the behavior science aspect of it, no one's going to do it. Like, it could be the best idea, but if it doesn't happen to something about our human behavior, no one will do the new thing. We do the things that we do right now because it is the easiest thing to do. So in behavior science, we have this idea of like, we want to make the right behavior the easy behavior. And the problem with traditional sustainability is right now the right behavior is way too hard in the current system that we have. So part of circular economy is changing the whole system to make it easier. And so changing the whole system involves the government and businesses, but wanting to do the new behavior and telling the government businesses we want a new system to make this easier for us is citizens. So that's why it comes from both ways, but for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Per, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, but I agree. I don't have the same background. I'm a biologist, though, so I know about ecosystems. But I mean, what we really have experience looking, of course, from our experience back, also before I entered this area of industrial simulation, it's a top down, bottom up process, I would say, in many ways. I think that's what we need. And then, of course, it can go back and forth, and we are probably influencing each other in a way that we don't know by actually telling small stories like we do today, or just in everyday work. The word is spreading. Like, we are also friends with people or parents or children of whatever. So all this is spreading around more than we actually know. Also to the politicians who are also human beings, right? So I think somehow it's spreading out, but the awareness of working bottom up and top down to actually reach something, maturing it both from the top and from the bottom, I think that is what is going to bring us towards implementing things better and faster.
Okay, I heard that rumor that the politicians are human beings, so thank you very much
for
sharing
right,
that.
Right.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Faith, Julie?
I guess I've seen it start as a groundswell and then, get kind of then adopted by the government in a way that makes it really effective. So just thinking about in New York City with plastics and, a lot of individuals and constituents becoming very concerned about our overdependence on plastics and single-use plastics, and sort of leading more of a grassroots campaign initially to do something about it, and then it getting kind of brought up, in kind of the best way that democracy works, having local elected officials take up that cause and then create policy at the city level, and use the buying power of the city, to ban purchase of single-use plastics in schools, in government entities, government contracts. So I think that's where kind of I see that really the grassroots mobilization first. But I do think it's so much, I'm curious about this kind of behavioral science approach, because I'm just thinking about COVID and mask wearing and compliance. And there was an interesting New York Times Magazine article last week about kind of how adoption of and compliance with mask wearing comes when you feel like people around you are doing it, and it's a social pressure. And so I think, that's really seeming to be the most effective, is when now it's like uncool to use a plastic water bottle, and to be throwing out your silverware. So I think that's what we try to do is, whether it started from the people or it started from the government, I think the work of my organization is sort of, my mom jokes that she thinks my job is making sanitation fashionable, and it's not quite right, but it's like sort of making these kind of zero waste and circular economy trends, and making composting cool, or making thrift store shopping cool, that kind of thing.
And we'll take it from another New Yorker, David Johansen, funky but chic.
Yes, and that's another call to action, Mike, too. We really need celebrities from all around the world to champion around circularity. So we need celebrities for circularity. So if you know of any that are, and a lot of them are already, promoting sustainability, but we need them to be openly on their social media talking about new circular models, talking about what's successful. I know Pharrell just did reusable utensils made out of music CDs. So I see a little glimmer there with Pharrell's organization, his nonprofit, but we need a lot more. We need celebrities can make anything cool. So please, celebrities, if you're out there, it's the call to action. Celebrities for circularity. If you can get on the bandwagon with us, that would be great, and create this awareness, because awareness is the first step to social change.
Right, Pierre. Are there any Danish superstars that we can bring into the mix here?
My kids. No, they are our superstars. I mean, I get so amazed how knowledgeable they are, how ambitious they are, and how natural they think. So there's a lot of good people working on this also at higher level. Also ambitious politicians and bold politicians that are trying to make this happen. And it's really moving ahead now, not only in Denmark or Nordic countries or Europe, but all over, I think. So I feel more and more kind of a sense of, the urgency we know, but the willingness, not only having leaders, but also people showing leadership at multiple levels is so important. Industry is really taking responsibility, also just exemplified through the COVID-19 situation. But really now they are moving also on the climate issue, and you were making joke about Larvae and the Back to the Future. We're actually now working on Power to X, where you take carbon dioxide green electricity from wind turbines or solar panels, and then you create methanol for cars, or you can do bioplastics. So a lot of good people, like a lot of good things that are already ready now, mature. We have the technology, but it's really going to be people who's going to make it happen. And that's kind of our saying for many years now. And I think it still holds. I mean, we have the technologies, but we really need the people to help us with the social behavior issues also, but also to actually put things together and make the right way, and have everybody with us on this. The end consumer, of course, also, but
sure. I think with jokes, there's always a little bit of truth tied to that as well. I think, Jennifer, you wanted to go ahead and add something?
Well, I really want to highlight something that Julie said, because I think it's so important about these social norms. With a lot of our new innovations for circular economy, taking reusable plasticware, reusable flatware as an example, it's such a new behavior for a lot of people to use something that has previously been disposable. And I think we, in the sustainability world, and I think we just oftentimes, we don't realize how big of a behavior it is when something is habitual. A habitual behavior is a huge behavior to break. That's really, really hard. And obviously, if disposable plastic is no longer available to you, you won't use it because it literally doesn't exist. That's one way to change behavior, is to make it not available. But another way, to Julie's point, it has to do with, it's also relevant for masking, is if you're the only one not doing it, that also becomes a less available behavior to you. And I think we expect, because this is the world that we're all in, we think, well, of course they'll do the right thing and use the reusable one, even though it's a little bit harder, it's a little bit more complicated, you might have to clean it, you might have to go buy something. Like, I'm willing to do that, but that's because I care a lot about it. But then we have to think about what's the vast majority of the population for which this is just a habit that they're breaking, and not something that is like core to their identity in some particular way. So social norms, I think, are actually a huge part of changing a lot of behaviors that have to do with circular economy, because to Per's point, these are innovations that happen at like a government level or a business level, but it's individual people that have to make these changes to their behavior. So we have to be thinking about what is a way that we can do it in a way that the vast majority of the population finds it simple and easy, just as simple and easy as whatever it was they were doing before, and whatever they were doing before probably includes using something once and throwing it out. It's hard to beat.
I think it's quite interesting.
It's really hard to beat that in terms of convenience.
But the question is, what is your standard and what is considered to be normal? And of course, it was a bit of a joke with what I think Per was saying as well, as far as his kids being the superstars. But the fact is, if I think about the situation with I'm teaching at different universities and going younger than that on the one hand, they are the ones that are actually setting the example for us right now, and we shouldn't forget it on the one hand. And on the second side, I notice a huge guilt, all tied to things that certainly my generation actually went ahead and put together. So if we're looking for those role models, I think, Per, that you were hitting the nail right on the head in looking at the younger generation. I truly do. Okay, I'm afraid we're getting close to the end, but I do not want to go ahead and leave without giving you a chance to maybe put together some final comments, if there was going to be a call to action or whatever it may be. So perhaps, Faith, we can go ahead and start with you, and we'll go around. We'll go counterclockwise.
I just want to thank this esteemed panel for sharing their ideas today. I think this is what like Per was saying, we need to do more of this. I'm sure something will come out of it from this sharing, like, oh, I didn't know you were doing that with symbiosis. So that may be something that we could adopt here in New York or down in North Carolina. And I'd love to hear more from Sophia, because you've lived in all these different areas in all these cities. I'd love to see a blog or a podcast or something come out of this where you talk about your experience around circularity in each one of those cities and highlight, the challenges and highlight what great things people are doing, because I think that would be, again, continuing on with the sharing. So keep sharing, and also keep innovating, and encourage all minds to innovate around circularity.
Great. Thank you very much, Faith. Jennifer, closing words.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'd say my closing words are, we're really excited about what we're doing here in North Carolina, and we love to learn from what other cities are doing. So if you are in a city that doesn't matter how far away it is, if you're doing some sort of circular economy initiative, please reach out because we love to learn about what other people are doing, and we want to create more opportunities for us to share what we've been learning and also to learn from you. And if you're not working on a circular economy initiative, but you are just interested in learning more about it, we have a lot of educational resources on our website, including events. We have a brown bag coming up right on Friday about the built environment. So definitely learn more about it.
We'll take this one offline, but I already have something I can offer you. So then maybe Christmas came a little bit earlier. All right, thank you. Julie, I know you're getting really anxious and you have your galoshes over the side and you're ready to go ahead and get your
starting. The snow is starting.
Is it really? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like I said, all jokes are half truth. Apologies. Last words from you, dear.
I've plugged our Refashion Week enough, but I think I echo what Jennifer said. You know, we exist to facilitate kind of new ideas into the city government in New York, and we rely on innovators and business leaders and citizens to team up with us. So please reach out. Our website is sanitationfoundation.org. Our social media handles are @Sanitation Foundation. And today you can log on and read about our how New York City prepares for snowstorms on our social media. But thank you all. This has been enlightening.
Oh, that's good. I'm going to take that as a positive comment. I'm just kidding. Thank you very much for that, Julie. Pierre, how about from your side?
Yeah, but just happy to be here and sorry for the delay, but it's so nice to be here and get to know you. And just one suggestion I would like to give you all, or here in the panel, but also listening, is somehow organize a one-point entry. I mean, we tried that to do in the Nordic region for industrial similar. So just, I know we're tired about websites, but I mean, a place to go in and see if I'm interested in circular economy in cities or whatever, in what region, to get to this region, who should I contact? If there's a contact person that can then, via their network, actually distribute those contacts into the right cities or task force or whatever. So because it's a jungle out there. We have a lot of people working with this, and to get into the right topic, the right contact person is quite a struggle sometimes. So if you don't already have it, a suggestion, we're trying to do that anyway now. You do actually have a first symbiosis network starting up in Washington State. We've been collaborating with them, and they actually got that through. So now they have money for starting 2021. It was a delay because of COVID-19. So you're already on your goal with the industrial symbiosis approach. And then last thing I would like to say is that we are producing a toolbox for facilitators to actually have the practitioners help implement circular economy, at least within this public-private partnership. So that's something that is coming out that I would like to share with you guys, and then you can share it around once it's public. But that really takes the practical approach as to how to go from the good idea to actually implementing some stuff in partnership.